Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to part 4 and possibly the final part of my this drawing of Alexandra Dowling. I thought maybe this would go to 5 parts, but I think I really want to get this done today. So just a couple of things. For the other parts of the tutorial, I've had this taped to my drawing table, which is how I usually start. But then it gets to a point where I want to be able to rotate the paper while I'm working, especially when I'm doing work in the hair. So I removed the tape, and I will, whenever I do move it, I will be careful to hold it from the edges only. As I've said in the previous parts, it's not really a good thing to let your fingers touch the paper, especially when you're working on a smooth surface like this one. And especially if you're going to be using a Q-tip like I do for blending. You make the fingerprints on the paper when you touch it, and then you blend with the Q-tip, and it's exactly like dusting for fingerprints in a police investigation. They just show up, and there's nothing you could do to get rid of them. Okay, so I think I'm pretty much just going to work all over the drawing today, and I don't really have a plan for the stops that I'll make. But I definitely want to work on the eyebrows. And maybe start to have them look the way they'll ultimately look when this is done. So I'm going to start by putting some dark tone with a 3B pencil in the eyebrow region, and I'm using this tone to define the shape of the eyebrow. And it kind of curves here over her brow ridge, and then it tapers towards the side of her head. I think I didn't get that curve quite right. Try to fix that. It's a very subtle curve, so I'll take out the graphite I put down, and now I'll try and put it down with a better version of the curve that I'm seeing in the reference photo. Okay, I don't know if that looks any different to you, but it looks different to me, so that'll do for there. And let's do this side as well. Her eyebrows are not as dark as some eyebrows can be, and that's due to the color of the hair in them. But when you're working with graphite, basically doing a grayscale rendering of a portrait, I sometimes find you need to make things a little bit darker than they appear in the reference photo, just so that they're visible. Okay. This points a little bit down into the well there. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an HB pencil, make it very sharp, and I'm going to draw in just a few lashes. The idea here is to make it look like you've drawn the lashes, when in reality you've mostly used shading. When drawing eyelashes, I try to start from where the eyelash would grow, from the skin, with a stroke that tapers as you move out. Okay, I made this a little too extreme here, so I'm going to just shade it a bit with the HB. Okay, I think that's better. I'm going to sharpen this crease, the eyelid crease, using the HB, since I'm looking at it. Same with this one here. The crease tends to be quite sharp. Okay, that looks alright, I guess. And with the lower eyelid, it's interesting. There's you know, the sphere of the eyeball pushes the lower eyelid downward, which always creates some shadow underneath. But before it does, it pushes skin here between the between the bottom of the iris and where there's the dark area. There's always a light area, and that's because there's sort of shiny, moist skin that faces upward. And I think you can definitely get away without showing that, but the more realistic you want to be, the more you want to try and show that. She has very fine creases underneath her eyelids. She's a very young actress, so not really beset by wrinkles at this stage of her life. So we'll just draw those in. Now this cast shadow on the side of her nostril needs to be darkened, and it extends just a little bit here. You'll notice I'm still using the HB pencil. That's because I find the tip stays sharp, and because it's an HB, you can still get some pretty dark tones with it. So it's like the best of both worlds, you know, which is why it's called HB. Best of the H, best of the B. I'm not going to start singing a Miley Cyrus song now. Okay, this part here is facing down more than I'm showing, so I'll put some tone in there. I don't have enough tone here to show that it's facing down, so I'll add some. And then here, this part's actually not so bad, but I need to show more here, just a little, very gently. Okay, I think that looks better than it did before. Had a lot of trouble with the ear in part 3, and I may never rescue it to my satisfaction, but I'll do what I can. The HB really gives me a nice sharp tip that I can use to create some finer detail. I'll also use the HB very much when I'm working in her hair. Right now, the way the hair is just roughed in, but when I go in there to finalize it, I use an HB a lot for that stage. The edge of the ear is quite dark because of the fact that it turns to face the back. So let me try and get that working properly. And then just gently blend it in. Okay, I think that may have made that better. And this is quite dark here, so I'll just use the HB to darken it. I'm actually pressing very, very lightly, as I almost always do. Very lightly. I don't know if you can hear the background noise very well. There's a space heater next to me. My drawing table / studio is in the basement of my house. I live in Toronto. Well, not in Toronto. I live north of Toronto, Canada. And we've been having some pretty cold weather here lately. And the basement is not that well insulated. So coming down here is a little bit of a sacrifice of my comfort. I don't mind it. But the space heater certainly is a necessity as far as keeping me and my limbs, keeping my limbs from freezing. Okay, this side of the face is looking not too bad. This side of the face is maybe not dark enough. So let me see what I can do just using a Q-tip to darken it. I want to be very careful here, because although there's some tone, because of the plane changes in her face, this side is more in light than the other side. And I don't want those tones to match, which can happen if you're not careful. Okay, I'm also gonna work here. I've made her lips sort of protrude too much. In other words, it looks like it looks a little more, I don't know. The expression is one of a little more consternation than what I really feel is happening, that I really want to capture. So I'm going to try and soften that by bringing her mouth back in, just by darkening the areas around. She does have very interesting shapes, which I want to maintain, but not as extreme as I had them. I think I've made that better. Okay, I'm going to darken this. And then I think I want to add some tone with the HB here. Very lightly. Because it's a little bit darker. There's this part here, which is dark. This is the eye socket. Sort of the border between the eye socket, which is the hole that the eyeball sits in, and the eyeball itself. The skin kind of sucks in, and that always creates these shadow wells. But the side of her skull, the tone is darker than it is in that shadow well of the eye socket. So I'm just going to use this HB pencil to add more graphite in that region, and then I'll take the Q-tip, as always, and blend that in, smooth it out, make the transition look fairly seamless, not the sharp edges that you get with a pencil. Okay, I think that's better. This maybe isn't dark enough here. Let me use the graphite that's on the Q-tip to darken this side. Yeah, I'm liking that a bit more. I may have brought the darkness out too far. Let me fix that. Okay, now I'm going to take a clean Q-tip and resolve that lightened area now. It's too much contrast. Okay, that's pretty good. And now I'll get a dirty Q-tip again and kind of show the brow ridge, the top part of the nose in between the eyebrows. So the brow ridge is right across here, the top of the eye sockets. And there's a little bit of protrusion at the top of the nose that makes the skin of the top of the nose face a little bit downward. So there's always a darker area here. It's very subtle. You don't want to overdo that. Otherwise you get a Neanderthal, which Alexandra Dowling is definitely not a Neanderthal. You just want to show it. Okay. And her nose, time to make that. I'm going to pay some special attention now to the nose. Very, very subtle stuff here. I find the Q-tip really handy. It is definitely a lot like painting. Something I've never tried. I should. I want to. But, you know, one thing at a time. I'm still pretty new at this whole art thing. Okay, let me take the 3B and give some more definition to the edge of her jaw here as it curves underneath and away from the light. The The tip of the 3B is pretty sharp right now, which I want, because I don't want a very blurry edge here. I want it to be a pretty sharp edge. Okay, she's got tone here because of the way her cheeks come in, where her cheekbone comes. Her cheekbone here is causing that skin to face up, and then there's this little depression here. It's very, very subtle. I say that a lot, but when you're doing portraits of women, especially young women, everything is subtle. Everything is subtle. There's nothing sudden or harsh. So that's why you're always working with very, very light pressure. You're always trying to do less rather than more. Less is more. That's one of the things you'll hear a lot of artists say. Alfonso Dunn, whose YouTube tutorials are fantastic, says that a lot, and I've watched so many of his tutorials. He works with pen and ink a lot, which it requires more courage than I have. You put pen to paper, that's it. There's nothing you're going to do to fix that. If you've made a mistake, too bad. Put pencil to paper, and you can always erase your mistakes. Okay, she's got some neat shapes around her mouth. I'm going to try and find a Q-tip with some graphite on it and try and show a little bit of that. There's the corner of her mouth, and then there's a neat little indentation right here. Maybe this Q-tip doesn't have enough graphite. Let me take another one. Yeah. Indentation here. And she has a similar one here. People are usually symmetrical this way. And now I'll take a cleaner Q-tip and smooth that out. I think you can see it actually in the camera. It looks much more extreme than it does in real life. But that's okay. I'm gonna keep. When I look at this through my real life eyes, you can barely see the effects of what I've done. When I look at it on the camera screen, it's quite pronounced. So that's interesting. I'm going to work through the camera eye instead of through my own eye, because I know this is being watched as it's recorded, not as I see it, and try and reduce the effects as they're shown in the camera. That's probably because I have the camera set for low light, and so it's creating a lot of contrast, more than there actually is. I'm gonna take some of this out. Yep, I see that looks better. Okay, yeah, that seems to have been successful. We can still see the shape, but it doesn't look so extremely pronounced as it did in the camera before. Okay, I can afford to bring the shadow closer to her lip here. Yeah, and here as well. Okay, and I think I want to take, let's see, I'll take an F pencil, and I'll just kind of, the skin turns in a little bit, like her lip starts here, but the skin starts to turn in a little bit just before the start of the lip, so I want to show that here. A little bit difficult to do without making it look like you've made the lip bigger. But I think I got it. The border between her upper and lower lip is not dark enough, so I'm going to take a 6B and deepen that carefully. Most of the darkness between the upper and the lower lip belongs to the upper lip. So if you're going to thicken the line, make sure you thicken it in the direction of the upper lip, not the lower lip. And you can also use it, like thicken it, hinting at creases. The creases will show the direction of her lip, like the direction that it's pointing, by which I guess I mean the curve, and also give you a chance to add tone to the upper lip. Yeah, I like that better than what was there before. I'll use the 6B to just define some of the creases in her lower lip now. You don't want to go overboard with this. If you're going for hyperrealism, then you have to spend years on the creases and stuff in the lips, but I'm not going for hyperrealism, just realism, I guess. So, I don't know how well that showed in the camera, but it's looking pretty good just using my naked eye. Okay, I've got the 6B. I'll darken the cast shadow. Under her jaw, onto her neck. I probably won't blend this with the Q-tip. When you blend with the Q-tip, which is something I love to do, it lifts graphite from the page, and it reaches a point in the drawing when you don't want to do that. You want it to stay as dark as you made it. If I feel like the strokes are showing too much, then I will take the Q-tip and smooth those out, but I'm trying to keep it smooth so that the strokes aren't showing, and if I do see some pencil strokes, I'm going over that region in a different direction to eliminate that. The changes here when you do this was a pretty dark area already. I am making it darker. The changes are subtle. They're important though. Okay, I do like that. I'm so tempted to do the eyelashes because her eyes just seem wrong without them, but I know from experience that if I do them now I'll regret it because I end up still smoothing things out, and I always destroy whatever work I did with the eyelashes, and it's just not good. So I'll resist the temptation to draw them in as badly as I feel I want to right now. You can use your 6B for a lot, but it does tend to dull very quickly, and you sort of get lost in what you're doing, and you keep rotating the pencil to get a sharper edge, but after a while, no amount of rotating gets you the sharp edge that you want. And then you remember, oh yeah, I have a pencil sharpener. Should probably use that. Okay, let's darken those pupils. And the edge of the iris. And now the iris itself is darker. I think I'll use a 3B with very, very light pressure to darken the iris. It's not seated very well in the lead extender. Let me fix that. This lead extender. It's a Derwent lead extender. This is a Statler pencil, and I think those devils at Derwent made it so that the lead extender only works for their pencils. I actually went and I bought this lead extender yesterday. It came in a 2-pack, and the lead extenders I wanted to buy were sold out. They had a 3-pack of this other brand for $10, and they were sold out, but I really, really wanted to come home with lead extenders, with pencil extenders I should say. So I bought this Derwent 2-pack. It was $7, so not as good a value. And it doesn't hold the Statler pencil as firmly as the other one would have. I mean, it holds it firmly enough, but it wiggles a little bit. Okay, and I think I'm going to take this 3B now, and I'm going to put in some just little suggestions of detail into the iris. What I try to do here is I imagine the iris is a circle, and I imagine where the center is, and I just hint at lines always radiating from the center. So you imagine there's a line, a radius from the center to the edge of the circle, and you just draw a part of that radius. These details tend to be more visible near the pupil and near the edge, I find, and not so much in the center. It's a cool thing to do. You see artists who just do these big eyes, especially if they use colored pencils, and you can just make the coolest patterns in the iris. And it's almost like you could just let your imagination flow. You can get away with anything as long as you maintain that sort of drifting towards the center. Okay, I'm looking at her nostrils. They're not dark enough. Let me get the 6B, and I'll just really put some graphite in here, darken this. It's very, very dark in there. Darkest area of most drawings, if the angle is right, is the cast shadow of the nose inside the nostril. And I'm seeing that this part here under her nostril is too light, so I'll pull some of the graphite, using a Q-tip, I'll pull some of the graphite down to darken that. Okay. A little bit of the same issue here. Okay. That looks better. Now I have done very, very little work in her neck, so I'm going to go into the neck area now, and I'm actually not going to use a pencil. I think I'm going to try and I've got all this graphite from the shadow in here, and I've got my Q-tip, so I'm just going to pull some of that down. Of course, it lightens the part that I take from in the shadow, but I'll put it back with the 6B. So there's this well of shadow that's created by the musculature, as tendons, I guess, that come down. Everybody's got them. These strong tendons that come down the side, and they show a lot of light at the top of the tendon, and then there's darkness. Or I should say shadow, not darkness. Shadow as you get further towards the side of the neck. So I'm really, it's almost like I'm dipping into a paint well, taking graphite from the shadow area of the neck and pulling it down. This is pretty uneven right now, so let me smooth that out. It happens. I'm not really worried about it. I may have panicked the first time I saw that happen, but I realized just with some dedication and a clean Q-tip, you can fix it up. the angle that I was making with this lighter area wasn't quite right. It goes more this way. We put that in with the eraser as a guide. I'll do it on this side as well. And now just move the graphite around. She's got quite a bit of shadow on her left side of her neck, and I will use a pencil for that. 3B, I think. Here. Lightly. Q-tip again. I get so many Q-tips going on the side here. I try to find the one that has the right amount of graphite on it for what I want to do. And then there's some shadow here, the collarbone. I'm kind of obliterating the necklace. I'll fix that after when I get to the necklace. I may decide not to do, I don't know what I'm going to do about that necklace. I should do it. Draw the necklace. Don't wimp out. Okay. I think I've given her neck the detail that I want. It's too light here. This is too extreme. Fix that. Yeah, that's better. It's too much, a little bit too uneven here. That's better. Okay, that looks pretty good. Here on the corner of the paper, right here where I'm holding it, I've been using my fingers there, and you can see the paper gets a little bit warped. It bothers me when that happens, so I make sure to touch it only on the sides of the paper. Okay, right now I'm just looking. I'm looking back and forth from the reference photo to my drawing, and I'm looking at the features of her face and seeing if there's anything that's really jumping out at me that I need to fix. As far as tones go, and I'm just fixing little things. Just really fine-tuning at this point. Okay, I think now I want to work on the hair. So I'm going to take I'm just organizing the Q-tips on the side here. I'm going to take my HB pencil, which I like to use for hair, and I'm going to turn the drawing on its side, which supports the angle of my hand better, and I'm going to start drawing in that hair. Patiently. I have a bad habit of becoming impatient when I'm working on hair. I'm actually turning the reference sideways as well, so that I don't have to transform it in my mind to the direction that I want it to be in, since I'm drawing essentially sideways now. And drawing sideways while looking at something that's not sideways is beyond my skill level. Okay, if I was going to fast forward any part of the video into like a speed drawing thing, it would be this part here with the hair, only because of how much time it takes and how patient you have to be to get it right. But I think I want to still keep this in real time. I decided that this first series would be all real time. You know, and maybe when I'm done, I'll take all the video footage of everything, and I'll record not record it. I'll put it into a file and speed that up so that the entire drawing from beginning to end can be seen as a speed drawing. Because I think, of course, there are some people, I can't really blame them, who don't really want to watch this whole thing in real time, because it does take a long time. As anything should, really. I mean, anything worth doing is worth doing with patience and care, and it takes time. It just does. And that's definitely something I don't mind. I don't like to do repetitive things for a long time, and I think maybe that's what my issue is when it comes to doing hair. It's a very repetitive process, and it takes a long time. But then again, I want it to look right when I'm done, and that's what it takes. So that's what I'll do. There's areas here that as I'm working, I'm leaving lighter. It's because her hair itself has tone, like her hair color. It has nothing to do with the light. It's the color of her hair. She has streaks of lighter tones and darker tones in her hair. And you want to be able to show that, as well as show the play of the light. So I'm really starting to think about that now at this stage of the hair. And I'll be coming in with an eraser later to bring out some highlights. But it doesn't hurt to try and be conscious of them when you're working with the pencil. So that's what I'm doing. It's being conscious of the highlights as I work with the pencil. There's a bead here. I'm just going to outline it for now, so that I don't forget that it's there. There's a bead here, and there's a bead here, and one here, actually cresting her hair. There's a bead here, and here, and here. Some big beads here. And then some cylindrical beads here. Okay, and let's continue with the hair. I can feel myself getting lazy with the hair. Not good. Don't do it. Don't get lazy. It's not worth it. And you don't like how it looks later. A little bit of self-chastising forced me to stay disciplined when working with the hair. Bead here and here. String from the bead. Beads are strung together and worked throughout her hair. Super cool. Whoever the hairstylist is, definitely an artist. Okay. Let me see how that looks. Okay, there's some smudging that went outside the area where I want there to be any pencil from when I worked with the Q-tip before. I'll take that out. And now that I've done that, I'll take that Q-tip back in. And gently. This time I don't want to blend the strokes out, so I'm actually moving the Q-tip in the direction of the strokes that I made, just to give more volume to the hair, but preserve the hinting of the strands themselves. Okay, that looks pretty flat. So now I'm going to try this new eraser that I got, which I'm pretty excited to try. It's I showed it in a previous video. It's a 2.3 millimeter eraser, mono 0. And in theory, you can use it for some precision erasing. I'm going to try that right now. I've never tried it before. But it seems like the kind of thing you'd really want to use for hair. So I'm using very quick strokes, and I'm liking already what I see. I'm no expert at using this kind of eraser, this being my first time. But wow, it's pretty effective for this. Check this out. essentially drawing strands now with an eraser. Wow, I like it. You have to make sure it stays clean. It picks up a lot of graphite and then becomes a little bit less effective. So I may use some sandpaper or just my fingers to pull bits of eraser off. It has a sharp edge, this eraser, and the sharp edge is allowing me to draw strands of hair. Wow. That looks better than it usually does at this stage. Yeah. Okay, I should spend some time with the beads, I think. Not too much time. I don't want to overdraw these beads. So I'll just shade them and leave highlights to show that they're three-dimensional. Some of them are spherical and some of them are cylindrical. Some of them are ovoid. I'm really being very, very loose with these. I want the viewer to know that they're there and to appreciate the work done by the hairstylist, but I don't want it to be a focus of the drawing. So I don't want to over-render them. These cylindrical beads at the top here, I'll just sort of shade the bottom a little bit, lightly shade the top. Okay, I think I can live with that. Yeah, I'm looking at it through the screen of the camera. Okay. That ought to do for now. I think I'll do more work in the hair. I want to have the edges where it curves around to the back be darker than they are. Pretty much all along. So I'll just add some definition, some tone here. Just to show that curve towards the back of her head. The beads are making a little bit of a cast shadow onto her hair, so I'll show that. Just trying to make it a little more interesting what's going on with her hair in some of these areas. I'm having a little bit of difficulty completely understanding how the hairstyle was done. So I'm trying to, certain things that I could see for sure are happening, I'm trying to make sure those are showing. And then other things, I'm just using the general shape and not trying to do too much trickery with strands of hair, because it's not realistic. It's not It's not what the hair is actually doing. So there's darker tones all along here, which I'm just roughly shading. The top looks a bit weird. Here, this is more uniform coming down. I think that's better. I think I want to put some more strokes in with the HB. And then maybe come back with that eraser. This eraser having such a fine tip is very, very convenient. You also have to keep it clean. So I keep bringing it to my fingernails and just scraping off the graphite. Okay, I think I'm going to leave the hair like that. And now I'm going to get into this royal outfit that she's wearing. It's kind of there's these two velvet straps. Let me bring the reference photo in. There are these two velvet straps here, and then this thing that kind of, it's a collar that kind of flares out, kind of like feathers, not feathers, but just embroidered to look like feathers. I'm not going to be able to get that effect to my satisfaction, so I'm actually going to simplify it. But I think I should emphasize the earrings, because on her left side the earrings are in front of that collar, and I don't want to lose them when I work on the collar. So I'm just going to give more definition to the outer edges. It's these teardrop shaped pearls. I don't know if they're pearls. They look like pearls, shaped like drops. Okay, and I think what I'll do is I'll start just with a flat layer of tone for this collar, and then I'll maybe use that eraser to pull some detail. There's actually a little bit of her skin showing here. Let me get a 2H and shade that. This right here, this is skin. So just putting down some 2H in this region, treating it the way I treat all skin, which is a very, very light layer of graphite using the 2H. And then I'll get a Q-tip and blend it. Okay, and then I think I'll start with this velvet strap on this side. So it looks really neat. So there's a shadow that it's throwing onto her skin. And I'll use a 6B to show that shadow. And then shade the side. The strap is kind of like a very flat rectangular prism laying down on over her shoulder. Goes over her shoulder like that. So there's a side of it that's not receiving very much light at all. And then there's the shadow. And then because it's velvet, it's got this neat texture in it, and it has some dips that receive less light. So I'm using very light strokes to try and create the texture of the velvet. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to make some darker areas sort of randomly to simulate what the velvet is doing. A lot of them cross the border onto the side. And then it disappears into shadow up here and starts to curve away here as well, so it's a bit darker here. This is darker, this region here. Okay, and on her right side, the velvet is there as well, but you can't see any skin on the other side of it. So here's the shadow being thrown by the velvet, and then there's the side of it. And then it gets dark pretty quickly because of the angle. So there's only a small light area here where the texture of the velvet shows. Okay, I've got those velvet straps in as good as I want them to be, I think. It's not critical that they're perfect. And now I'll shade that collar. I think I'll use a 3B to shade the collar. Start with the edges to create a buffer for some more generalized shading. A buffer between areas I don't want to color with this level of tone in areas that I do. Okay, now that I've created that buffer, I'll work my way out and slowly morph the shape created by the borders. Just slowly morph it into something more consistent. Just fade off to the side here, not drawing that out. You can see where I don't complete the stroke, right to the edge of the collar, and then I have to go back and I have to add more tone. You can see the border. It's a mistake. I should really use strokes that fill in the entire region in one smooth stroke so that you don't get a border. So I'm going to get almost right to the edge of the collar with these strokes, and then I'm going to get right up onto the edge using some small circular strokes. I'm going to resist the temptation to turn the drawing sideways and color that in sideways, because I've learned from experience that when you change the direction of the stroke so dramatically, it shows, and it takes a long time to fix that. Okay, now I'll work on giving some shape to this collar by deepening tones, by adding more graphite. Some areas, there's also a shadow that's being cast by her onto the collar. These beads are these pearls of the earrings are really well in front of the collar, so it's very dark behind them. I'll choke up on the pencil a little bit so that I can make finer detail in there. And then I was using a bit more pressure, and if I don't continue that pressure out, then it's going to be obvious that I spent time and pressure in around the earrings, and you don't want that. So it has to come out the same way. Okay, I'm just trying to draw that, trying to show that cast shadow that she's making onto the collar. Okay. I think I'm going to take a cotton swab to this to try and even it out. The strokes of the pencil are showing more than I like. Sometimes that's okay because it gives a texture almost accidentally to material, but I don't like it in this instance. So, cotton swab, gently smooth that out. Blur the edge so it's not quite obvious where I stopped the drawing, or where I stopped the drawing. Okay. I think I'll go back in with some more graphite now. 6B this time. Start with this area where she's casting a shadow onto the collar. Redefine that, make it darker again. The cotton swab took away a lot of the graphite, it does that. It evens it out, but it also removes some, and I want it here. So, I'll put that back in, and now continue that here. Now that I've blended it with the cotton swab, I'm more okay with strokes revealing themselves because it's not such a contrast between the stroke and the white paper underneath. Okay, I think maybe that's not dark enough. So now I'm using more pressure with the 6B to get this region to be darker. And I'm going to come here to the top of the collar and actually define the border of the collar and the area behind her. I'll do that, not a straight line, because it really wouldn't look like a straight line, kind of a wavy line. Blur this region here with the Q-tip. Okay, that looks good. I'll do the same thing on the other side with the 3B. Now that there's a lot of graphite here, if I put this paper down on it, the paper itself starts to pick up graphite and that smears all over the drawing. So I'm going to turn the drawing so that I don't have to have the paper on that graphite. I'll turn it completely upside down. And repeat the process on this side that I did on the other side. The side is receiving more light. So I'm not going to shade it quite as dark as I did the other side. I'm not worried about shading into the velvet strap because it's darker. So any graphite that gets in there from the shading that I'm doing now doesn't really change anything significantly. The nice thing about the 3B is you can shade large areas pretty quickly. I have to remind myself to use complete strokes so as to not get those borders. And I'll do what I did before and use this circular motion to finish this here. It's making it look a little bit different. I'm going to play that off as shading to show that it's curling back. Okay, that's too light. Well, I'll blend it a little bit with a cotton swab. and then I'll come in with a 6B. And introduce more tone with the 6B. I'm putting graphite down with the 6B, but I'm not trying to shade consistently. I'm also being careful not to press with my hand on this. It's right in that area where there's so much graphite, and I don't want the paper to pick up graphite that smears all over the drawing. Okay. You can see the pencil strokes here a little bit. It's actually okay because I'm going to take the eraser and put some of the embroidery in, and I'm going to use those pencil strokes. Okay, let me take that cool eraser and just hint at this embroidery. I'm gonna use some sandpaper that I have beside me to clean this eraser a little bit. It's picked up a lot of graphite, and I want a nice clean edge. And embroidery on this side as well. I'll do it like this. I'm really not trying to match the embroidery from the reference photo. It's not important to me that I match it, just that I'm just using it to show contour. I think this needs to be a little more obvious. Looks a little too random now. Let me try and create some pattern. Okay. I think that'll do. Now I want to work on her necklace before I call this drawing complete. And I think I'll start by erasing where the beads are. I'm going to use the mechanical eraser. And create these white areas for the beads. She has two necklaces. She has a pearl necklace, like made of big, obvious pearls, and then she has a necklace which is tiny, tiny pearls wound around each other. I'm going to see if I can fake that. The eraser. The one that has the pearls wound around each other also has some other pearls hanging from it. Okay. Sometimes when you try to blow the eraser shavings off, you get some saliva on the paper, which is no good. So, specialized eraser brush. Okay, and just like the beading on her. In her hair, I don't want to overdo these, so I'm using a B pencil, and I'm just going to draw the shadows of these pearls. To start. And then I'm going to do as little as I can with them, just to show about this necklace that she's wearing. Same with this wound necklace. Sharpen the pencil. My reason for doing the necklace this way, mostly because I find if I try to overdo the details on these things, it looks pretty bad. So I don't. I just suggest them. I'm going to take a 6H and try and give a little bit of shape to these pearls. Okay, yeah, believe it or not, I don't want to do much more to the necklace. If I do more, it's not going to look right. I'll take that B pencil back though, and I'll use a 3B. There's just some shadow here that the necklace throws onto her neck. And I'll try and smooth that with the Q-tip a little. Okay. And now the earrings, I'll take the 6H. get those going. Maybe that's too light. I'll use the 2H. To give a bit more tone to it. Same on this side. Maybe to keep things consistent, I'll start with the 6H on this side. And then the 2H. And then there's a pearl here. There's the wire. And the pearl is attached to this flowery metal thing. I'm going to come back to that with a darker pencil. The flowery metal thing also has pearls in it on both sides. And I'll just give that some lines. Take a 3B, make it sharp. And give some dark lines to this. Just to show the shape of it. Same thing here. Okay. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and call this... Oh, I was going to call this drawing complete, but no, I forgot the eyelashes. I didn't forget the eyelashes, but I was going to call it complete without working on the eyelashes. It's time for the eyelashes. 6B pencil. This can actually be pretty nerve-wracking when you do these, because if you get them wrong, so hard to fix. So I find eyelashes tend to be, there's not as many as you think, and they tend to be sort of triangular, which is to say that they're thicker at the base than they are at the top, and that's because several lashes sort of combine into one shape. So dark at the bottom and then tapering at the top. And the lower eyelid also has lashes. These ones are very fine. And knowing when to change the direction, you know, they sort of go out, and then eventually you draw them straight up vertically on the page, and then they change the other direction. Okay. What do I think of that? I think they look a little bit weird. So maybe what I'll do is I'll add some tone behind them with a B pencil. And then reinforce them. I think that's better. They don't look as good close up as they do further out. But that'll do. Okay, I am going to call this drawing complete. Thus ends part 4 and the final part of this series of me drawing a portrait of Alexandra Dowling on Bristol. And thank you so much for watching. Any comments or feedback, I'd love to hear from you. Thanks. Bye-bye.